At the start of the league, I was going to play Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder. However, after posting my video on that league starter, a few people brought up the potential for Slayer Poisonous Concoction. So I decided I would PoB it, and honestly it looks super strong. However, since it was 2 days before league start, I didn't have a chance to test it, so I didn't really want to release a video since it was still untested. But I did end up league starting Poisonous Concoction Slayer, and it was one of the strongest league starters to endgame builds I've ever played. With how strong both frenzies and endurance charges are, this build is super tanky while having pretty solid damage. It's the first character I've ever played to level 99, and one of the first characters I've taken into Ubers. T17s with shrines are a complete joke, and that's without any of the nerfs that happened over the last couple of weeks. Even without shrine cheesing, this build is still super smooth. In the description will be 2 PoBs, one that I used for my actual league starter for those that want to play this build but don't have a ton of currency, so you can start there and then slowly transition into the endgame version, and then a second PoB that is my current endgame setup. A lot of the items in my current endgame setups will be expensive if you try to just buy them outright. I'd suggest crafting them. Not only will it be a nice way to save money, but also for those that are newer to crafting, this can be a nice introduction on how to craft in current PoE. Many of the items are pretty standard items that you'll use on a lot of different builds, especially if you're playing anything that is either spell suppress based or needs PDR on items. For leveling, it's super straightforward. If you can't afford Poisonous Concoction bouncing right away, you can use normal P-Conk and it'll be perfectly fine. I have a full walkthrough in the League Start PoB for leveling. You'll get tons of damage on the tree, and if you have any of the twink gear, you'll absolutely smash through the campaign. Now, I've made a ton of videos talking about Poisonous Concoction, so I'm not going to talk about interactions in this video, but I will hit on the most important part of the skill for those that haven't played it. This skill scales its damage based off the amount of recovery you have on your flask. This is scaled by both quality and increased amount cover mods on the flask itself. Make sure that you are consistently upgrading your flask when leveling and using multiple life flasks. If you have any questions related to Peacock specifically, feel free to leave a comment. This build has very good survivability. The most important thing for survivability in this build is to get to max endurance charges as soon as possible. This can be done with Enduring Cry, and when it's linked to urgent orders, it's almost instant. Once you get the chest implicit, all you have to do is press it once at the start of the map, and you'll sustain charges for the rest of the map. This build is using a Lethal Pride for Strength of Blood. You get a ton of survivability from this, and that's why you take the extra leech nodes on the tree. If you don't have Strength of Blood yet, do not take the extra leech nodes. All you need is a little bit of a leech to sustain the cost of this skill. The other rolls on the Lethal Pride don't really matter, but you can get a couple of things that are pretty good for the build. Regen is nice. If you get to a point where your regen regenerates the degen from Blood Rage, you don't have to run Vitality. Fire Res is really good. You don't have to worry about getting extra resistance rolls on pieces of gear if you can get 2 Fire Res mods on your Lethal Pride. Life is also great, and Flat Strength is really nice for capping your attributes easier as well. Just get whatever you can afford. Now, in the PoB, I am using tattoos. But if you can't afford the tattoos, or you don't want to spend the 4 divines for both of the tattoos, then you can drop the Finesse Anoint and Anoint Intuition instead. Just a side note here, this patch did introduce Double Anointed Jewelry from Blight. You can try to search for one of those that has a good anoints if you want to spend extra time. There's a lot of decent anoints for this build, and there's not really an anoint that's like super better than any other anoint. So if you get 5% damage and spell suppression on any piece of gear, it's a super nice solution to not having to use tattoos. This build has done and can do all content in the game. The clear is fantastic, the boss damage is great, and once you get 9 endurance charges, you almost never die. On top of that, it has insane leech to the point where you can face tank most bosses in the game. Slayer as a whole has completely taken over PoE, and this build on Slayer is probably the best option for Poisonous Concoction. The progression from low to higher budget is super smooth, and it can probably take this build even further if you wanted to. Getting a frenzy charge on your ring would be absolutely insane. Relic Heshes are still broken, and the Maven frenzy charge belt would probably push this build close to dot cap, if not close to Uber dot cap. But I've gotten to the place where this build can do everything, so I don't really see a reason to go that deep into investment. But that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and if you like this video, leave a like. Thanks for watching.
Concoction.